All right, full disclosure, this is just gonna turn into unhinged yelling pretty much immediately. Today we're talking about not taxing tips. Ladies and gentlemen, if you don't know, both presidential candidates have come out and said that they no longer want to tax tips. Now, is this blatantly political pandering to get votes because Nevada's a swing state and a ton of them rely on tips for income? Absolutely, okay? But unfortunately, pretty much every tax cut on the books is either pandering directly for votes or pandering to get donations to their campaign so that they can buy more votes. And while that's certainly not ideal, I thought it was cool because this is probably like the only time in my adult life that I can think of where two presidential candidates were on the same page about literally anything. And honestly, it just made sense because you've got Republicans, people on the right side of the aisle that generally speaking are just against taxes, period, of any kind. And then you've got Democrats or people on the left side of the aisle that, you know, they're more pro-taxes, but generally speaking, they want to tax richer people, not necessarily tax lower income people, like generally speaking, the people that are working for tips. And then for me, I was just excited I was going to be allowed to tip somebody that did a good job, knowing that the government wasn't going to step in like fucking Debo and take some of the money.
So y'all don't get nothing?
Hell yeah. Got about $200, huh, Debo?
I got about $200.
Because that's absolutely ridiculous. In my mind, at least, a tip is basically a gift to that person, and you're allowed to give away like $17,500 a year to an individual as a gift and not have it taxed. So why the fuck does the government need to tax the $5 gift that I'm giving to the kid that delivered my pizza? So I was excited. I thought for like the first time in my adult life, the Republicans and the Democrats agreed on something and it was actually gonna help out normal working everyday Americans. And then I wake up and the news cycle hits and every mainstream media outlet and every economist on the planet apparently thinks that this is an awful idea, and they've got the dumbest fucking reasons I've ever heard of in my entire life, and we're gonna get into those right after a word from our sponsor. This video is brought to you by Rocket Money. It is pretty much your one-stop shop for all your financial needs. It helps you establish a budget, it monitors your credit, and it even lets you track your net worth. But what I use it most for is helping me track and cancel all my subscriptions because I'm always trying to watch MMA fights, my wife's trying to watch Caitlin Clark in the Indiana Fever, and then we have to sign up for a different streaming service every other day because for some reason every MMA fight and every Caitlin Clark game is on a different streaming service for some reason. So you gotta sign up for the 7-day free trial, then you forget that you signed up for it, and then you're paying $10 a month for the next 10 years. In addition to that, all your other recurring bills like your cell phone bill, your internet provider, your cable, Rocket Money will actually help you negotiate lower prices for those bills as well. So if you want to give Rocket Money a try, you can check it out at rocketmoney.com/fatfiles. I'm gonna have that link and a discount code down below. Let's get back to the video. All right, the history of tipping. Tips have functionally only actually been taxed since like 2012. Buh! Actually, tips have always been considered taxable income. Buh! Yeah, I'm aware. That's why I use the word functionally in there because yeah, they were technically taxable income since 1913 when the income tax was first established. However, they were never actually really taxed until about 2012. And that's because you couldn't enforce it, right? Because at the end of the day, laws only matter if you can actually enforce them. And back in the 1900s, all the transactions were done in cash and you had to rely on that waiter or waitress or whoever to report the amount of tips they got to the IRS, which nobody on the face of the earth is actually gonna do. Buh! But it's still illegal, so you have to. Buh! Holy shit, I do not understand how people don't understand this concept. Okay, let me break it down for you a little bit more, all right? I live in Iowa, for example, and if I'm sitting down at dinner and somebody says, hey, will you pass the butter? And I grab some margarine instead and pass that to them, that's illegal in the state of Iowa. It is a misdemeanor to pass off margarine as butter, okay? Guess who's enforcing that law? Fucking nobody. It's illegal in Arizona to put llamas in bathtubs. It's illegal in Delaware to whisper in church, okay? None of that shit is getting enforced. Nobody cares. This is one of those times.
Ow! Christ, Jake, take it easy, man.
That was...
Oh, Jesus Christ. Ow! Jesus Christ. Ah, shit.
Jesus.
Now, that being said, the government absolutely does not want it to be one of those times. The government wants to tax tips really, really bad, and they've got a long track record to prove it. In 1965, the IRS really tried to crack down on this when they came out and basically said like, hey, you're required to report all of your incomes. It's taxable income and you need to pay us taxes on it. But 1965, everybody was still paying with mostly cash, so everybody continued to just not listen. So the IRS could do literally nothing about it. So still wanting to get that tax money, in 1982, the IRS came out and then told the employers, hey, we're gonna require you to track your employees' tips and then you report that back to us, okay? Multiple problems with this again. You're asking the employer to side with the government over their own employees, so that's probably not gonna happen most of the time. And then, even if that does happen, it's still 1982, everybody's still paying with cash, and if the employer's trying to figure out how much money in tips the employees made, they're just gonna lie anyways, so it's still completely ineffective. So the IRS is just getting more and more pissed pissed off. They realize that they really have no way to track this, which means they have no way to enforce it, which means there's people out there just giving money to other people and the government's not getting a cut, which absolutely infuriates them. So in 2000, they basically resort to scare tactics. They launch the Tip Alternative Reporting Agreement, which is essentially an education program for employers and employees, letting them know how dangerous it is if they don't report their tips. Again, completely ineffective. So then they launch another program in 2002 known as the Employer Tip Reporting Compliance Agreement, which was basically the same thing all over again. And again, it is completely ineffective. And then in 2007, they get a truly diabolical idea when they come out with the Small Business Work Opportunity Act, which basically goes to the employers and says, hey, you need to start tracking all of your employees' tips, and the more tips you report of your employees, we're going to turn around and give you a tax credit so that you actually make money the more your employees report tips. Basically, they're taking the employer-employee relationship and pitting them against one another over who gets to make the money. Okay, 100% government playbook 101. Take two groups of poor people, get them to fight each other instead. They'll never realize that you're the one being the asshole. Okay, makes perfect sense. They do it all the time.
I say, let them fight each other, or we lay back, watch, have a drink, play some wagers. Hey!
So this is where reporting on tips did start to go up quite a bit because some employers were in fact willing to sell out their employees. However, a lot of them still weren't willing to do that. So then in 2012, the IRS finally came out with the Attributed Tip Income Program, which is basically the IRS saying, hey, it's 2012, most people are paying with a debit or credit card, some electronic form of payment, which means that you now have a digital record of them receiving that money, and we're gonna legally require you as the employer to report that information to us.
Gotcha.
And this is where tips really functionally started to be taxed, because even in modern times, if you tip with cash, they can just put that in their pocket and nobody really knows. But the vast majority of people tip on the receipt with their debit or credit card, and now there's an electronic paper trail and they have to end up reporting that to the IRS, and then they do have to pay taxes on it.
Thanks, Obama.
So look, I'm not a tax expert. I'm not an economist. I'm an electrician that just likes to point out obvious shit. So I figured we've only functionally been taxing tips since like 2007 to 2012, however you want to look at it. I remember when I was a waiter in 2008 in high school, and my boss had to pull me aside and be like, hey, just so you know, our company's going to start reporting all the electronic tips to the IRS. So you're going to have to pay taxes on that on the end of the year. Just be aware, because I worked for a major chain restaurant and they were willing to sell us down the river. So I just figured, like, we've only been taxing this thing for 10 years. In reality, what's it gonna hurt to just not tax these guys, right? Because if I end up ordering a pizza during a snowstorm and some 19-year-old kid in a clapped out Camry comes through, I want to be able to give him a $20 bill in cash as a thank you and not have the government be involved, right? I just want the authority and the agency in my life to be able to do nice things for random strangers and not have the government demand a cut. That's all I want. But apparently I'm wrong, because every single mainstream media outlet started putting out news articles and videos explaining in detail why this is a horrible fucking idea, and all of the economists agree. And then you actually read the articles or you watch the interviews with economists, and they have the dumbest fucking talking points on the planet, to the point that it's actually insulting to your intelligence. So the first argument is, if we don't tax tips, it's going to end up costing the government between $100 and $150 billion over the course of the next 10 years. So where are they going to recoup that money from, right? Because you have to go and get that money from somewhere else if we're not going to take it from the waiters and waitresses and delivery drivers.
Where do you get the revenue to offset that? Because it's also apparently going to advance the insolvency date of Social Security's retirement trust fund by over a year.
Now, at a glance, that almost sounds like a mildly coherent opinion if you don't think about it whatsoever. I mean, it's so egregious that one of two things is happening. Either they're just blatantly lying and they know that you're dumb, or two, there's this like phenomenon that happens where you become so well educated that you've been detached from the rest of normal society outside of academia for so long that you no longer have any common sense. And I think that might actually be what's going on here. Now, look, again, I can't stress this enough. Not a tax professional, not an economist, just a guy, but hear me out. What if we just spent less fucking money? You know, like, what if we bought and gave away a few less fucking missiles to other countries? Like, I feel like that's a good compromise.
No. No, I don't think I will.
No? Okay, we'll just move right on to the next argument then.
There aren't a lot of tipped workers in America.
According to economist Ernie Tedeschi, tipped work accounts for just 2.5% of all employment.
Cool, I understand that most people aren't paid in tips, okay? I'm not rooting for this plan because I think it's gonna change the world on a grand scale. I'm rooting for the plan because I should be allowed to give the fucking delivery driver $10 without the government stepping in like the mafia and demanding their fucking cut.
It's been 24 hours. Got my money?
Yeah, I don't have it, sorry.
Well, all right then. That's good, OJ.
And then the next thing they go on to say with this argument as well, it could be really hard on businesses like restaurants because now the restaurant owner has to deal with the fact that some of his employees just got a tax cut and the people in the kitchen didn't get a tax cut, meaning the waiters effectively just got a raise and the cooking staff didn't, and then people might get mad and quit and it could end up ending their entire business. And this is the part where they're actually insulting your intelligence, right? I mean, you expect me to honestly believe that an entrepreneur that's smart enough to run a fucking business is gonna have the government approach them and be like, hey, I'm gonna take less money from your business. And the entrepreneur is just like, fuck, this is gonna put me under. Having more money is just fucking, I can't do it. It's not manageable.
I haven't cried like that since Titanic.
Okay, look, controversial opinion. I'm so hardcore capitalist that I wholeheartedly believe that if your business goes under because the government steps in and says, hey, I'm gonna quit fucking over some of your employees. Literally, I'm gonna add more money to what your employees are receiving on a daily basis, and that's what fucking puts you out of business. I don't care because you suck at being an entrepreneur and you deserve to go out of business at that point. I encourage the competition because I know there's other people out there that if the government stepped in and said, hey, I'm gonna take less money, they'd fucking figure it out. And the best part about this, that's not even the most offensive argument, okay? This is the most offensive argument.
So for example, if you took a delivery worker who delivered food, they probably get tips. And so they would qualify for this tax benefit. If you took a delivery worker who delivered packages, they usually don't. So they wouldn't get a tax benefit. I can't think of a good reason why you would want to give a tax break to the person who delivers food, but not to the person who delivers mail.
Okay, to compare a pizza delivery driver to a fucking UPS driver is absolutely fucking insane, okay? It doesn't make any sense. It's on par with being like, well, you know, we don't want to give CNAs a tax cut because then we're not going to give doctors a tax cut, and they're basically the same job. They both just walk around the fucking hospital wearing pajamas, right? No, one of them is paid significantly more than the other for performing more complex fucking tasks, okay? A UPS driver on average makes $27 an hour with wages going as high as $43 an hour, on top of 18 paid holidays and sick days, 7 weeks of vacation, and industry-leading fucking healthcare. The pizza delivery guy's making $7 to $13 an hour with no fucking benefits whatsoever. If no tax on tips goes into effect, there's 0 fucking UPS drivers that are gonna quit their job and go work for Pizza Hut. Also, I lied. That was actually the second most offensive argument. The most offensive argument is this.
Let's say I'm a salesperson that gets a commission, or let's say that I'm somebody on Wall Street that gets a year-end bonus. So I reclassify my commission as a tip, or I reclassify my year-end bonus as a tip. The employer helps out because they'll get a benefit, and so everybody wins.
Okay, this is blatantly taking advantage of the fact that most Americans don't really understand how taxes and income works, and they don't really know how to read their W-2, okay? You can't just go to your fucking employer and be like, hey, Jim, I thought about this. I'd rather my salary get converted from normal income to tips. Hardy har har har. That's not how any of that fucking works. And if you don't believe me, go to your boss tomorrow and be like, hey boss, I've thought about this a lot and I would really appreciate it if on my W-2 you changed all the wages I've earned and told the IRS that those were capital gains, because capital gains are taxed far less than normal wages. You wanna know what your boss is gonna tell you? No, because that's fucking tax fraud. You wanna know why? Because the IRS has very clear definitions of what earned wages are and what capital gains are. They also have a very clear definition of what a tip is. From the IRS, tips are discretionary, optional, or extra payments determined by the customer that employees receive from customers. So a salesperson receiving a commission, not a fucking tip. So a CEO getting a bonus at the end of the year, not a fucking tip. Like the one time the government is actually trying to give a tax cut to lower income working people, they come out swinging with the lies of, well, this tax cut's actually only gonna affect the rich because the rich will just fucking magically turn all their income into tips, is fucking nonsense. Okay, I'm calm. Now, to be completely fair and intellectually honest, there was one good argument that these economists managed to come up with, and that was that if you don't tax tips, you kind of end up incentivizing it in a way, and you're going to help prop up tipping culture even more than it already is. And a lot of people don't like tipping culture in America and wish it would just go away. Which, you know what, to be fair, actually a great argument, right? Because we all feel that way, especially recently, because now they fucking whip the iPad around when you're like picking up your own pizza. It's not being delivered. They still want a 20% tip. Get the fuck out of here, right? Don't get me wrong. I don't mind tipping. I'll tip the waiter, the waitress, the delivery driver. I'll tip my tattoo artist. I'll tip my hairstylist. I mean, my wife does my hair, so her tip's a little bit different. But the point remains, okay? I don't mind giving out tips when you're actually doing something. But at the same time, it is a weird cultural norm that seemingly only America has in modern times, and it is kind of dumb. And if we got rid of it, it wouldn't hurt my feelings one bit. However, the notion that the government should step in and tax it to decentivize tips is also complete fucking nonsense. Because guess what? If you actually do want to get rid of tips, one way to guarantee that you never ever achieve your goal is to allow the government to keep taxing them, making $150 billion, because then they're never going to get rid of it because they're making all the money off of it.
That's not fair.
You're learning. Uh-oh. Capital gains tax.
Okay, this is gonna be a tough pill to swallow. You might not like this opinion, but guess what? If you don't like tipping, don't tip. It's 100% voluntary. You don't have to do it, okay? And guess what? If you get enough people that quit tipping, it'll just go the fuck away and the problem is solved, okay? That's the answer. The answer is not, I don't like tipping, therefore I'm gonna root for taxes, okay? That's completely fucking absurd. Oh, but maybe if the government taxes me more, I'll finally get free healthcare or public schools will be better. No, the government's never gonna fucking make public schools better or give you free healthcare, okay? They're gonna take your money, they're gonna buy missiles, and they're gonna shoot them at poor people in countries that you don't know how to spell. Okay, don't get this twisted. I don't like that. I'm not rooting for it. I think it sucks. However, my point is, if you're advocating that the government should tax tips so that they can divert like a third of that money over to healthcare or education or whatever you think is important, hear me out. What if you just did that? What if you took all of the money that you were gonna tip that person and you donated it to the local school instead? You could solve the problem way better than the government ever can. Quit letting the government and the news gaslight you into rooting for fucking taxes. And apparently on this instance, it's not even the government. Literally, the Republican candidate and the Democratic candidate are on the same page, and it's just the news trying to gaslight you into taxes, which makes no sense to me. Anyways, I gotta go before I give myself a heart attack. Sorry this was so unhinged, but thank you for watching. Quack bang, out. Seriously, am I the only person that feels this way? Because reading the news headlines in the comment sections kind of makes me feel like I am.